Hey guys, and welcome to another episode. Today in this video, I'm going to show you how to undercoat your car. Now this product right here is a 3M undercoat, and you're going to apply this to the entire bottom side of your car to prevent the car from rusting. Now this is a very important product, and it does a very good job of protecting the car, especially over the winter months of the year. So if you're driving, say somewhere north, and there's a lot of snow and salt on the road, well, if that salt comes in contact with any bare metal that you have on the bottom side of your car, it's going to rust. Now that's why we're going to be spraying this 3M rubberized product on the bottom side of it to intervene between that rusting process. So it's going to block all of that rust from coming out and being activated from the salt that's going to come in contact with it. So I just went ahead and lifted the car and put it on jack stands. Now what we have to do is we need to remove all of the wheels and set them aside. Now the reason why we're doing this is because we want to clean up the wheel wells, the entire inside of them, and also the underside of the vehicle. Now removing the wheels out of the way is going to give us room to spray our undercoat underneath all of it. Now if you guys have seen the entire build for this car, you guys would have seen part 1. And part 1 was me showing you guys how to degrease the wheel wells. Now what I did was I used Meguiar Super Degreaser in a sprayable bottle with a brush, and I cleaned up all of the dirt, all of the gunk, and everything that was found underneath in here. Now, if you can tell right now, you can see that it's not exactly looking the greatest. So right here is the actual part of the car. That right there should all be blue. Now, because there's dirt in the way, you can see that it doesn't quite look so blue. Now, once we clean it up, it's gonna look unreal. And once we have it cleaned, then we're gonna be spraying down our 3M undercoating, and that's gonna prevent all of this stuff over here from being exposed from salt, which is gonna potentially rust out our vehicle and make it look like junk. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab our hose, spray all this down with water, and then clean it up using our Super Degreaser, our dilutable bottle, and our brush.
So I'm not going to make you guys sit through this entire procedure, so I'm just going to give you a quick rundown as to what I'm doing. So I'm first spraying the car down with a little bit of water just to get everything wet. Then with my diluted Meguiar Super Degreaser in my sprayable bottle, I'm spraying it in the entire wheel well just so that everything is going to get cleaned up. So get in any of the intricate areas, whether it be behind the shock, above the shock, or anywhere, wherever you want to cover, it needs to be perfectly clean. Spray a little bit of the soap inside of your brush and go to town. Now what you want to do is you want to try and agitate all the dirt that's in there so that it all gets released from the wheel well. When we apply the 3M undercoating, it's not going to stick to the car if there's dirt in between. So we need to get a nice clean surface for all of this to work. So go ahead and clean the entire wheel well down until you're satisfied with the results. And then as soon as you're done, grab your hose and spray everything down. Remove any of the degreaser that's still in the wheel well, clean it all up, and by the end of it, it should all look nice.
If you can tell in here, you can see that it looks very good. However, it could get a little better. Now this is just with one quick pass of using the degreaser and our brush. Now you're gonna clean this up until the entire wheel well looks great, and then we're gonna continue on to the second, third, and then fourth wheel well. So once you're done, everything should look nice and clean, and you shouldn't see any dirt found inside the wheel well. Now what we're gonna be doing now is we're gonna be drying all this up so that we can get all that water removed. And then once it's all clean and dry, we're gonna apply our undercoat over this entire area. Now to get it dry, you can use any method you like. You can use cloths, you can use a blowgun, you can use a hair dryer, you can use a heat gun. You're just gonna be using any method you can to remove any of the water that's found in here. Now the reason why we're doing this is that we wanna make sure that our undercoat is gonna adhere and bond properly to the frame of the car. And we're not gonna be able to do that if all of this is wet. So if you want, you can use a towel to get the big stuff, and then any intricate area you can blow out using this gun. Now that it's all dry, next comes masking. So you can use any method you want to mask up the stuff that we don't want covered in the undercoat. So the undercoat is only gonna be covering the frame, which means everything else we need to mask up. So you can use a garbage bag, you can use a grocery bag, or you can use tape and drape or tape or any other method that you like. Now I find using a bag like this, open it up, and if you slide it over top of the entire braking system, it'll cover the entire thing up very easily. So that's covered, that's not gonna be an issue. Now next up we need to cover up the coilover. To do that, I'm gonna be using a piece of tape and drape. So it's just a piece of tape with plastic attached to it. Gonna cut it and then slide it down. So just come up here, tape it around to itself, and then slide the bag down. Just like that. Now to keep it so that the bag doesn't move around, so the little tape and drape, I'm just gonna tape it up like so. Just gonna have it wrap around so it's gonna stay tight on the coilover. Now, once we have that done, we're gonna grab our can, give it a good shake. Now, before we actually go ahead and spray it on the car, I would suggest doing a test shot on the side to see what the fan pattern and the spray is like on these things. Now, this is not like a typical spray paint, so it doesn't have a fan pattern that's tall and you spray across. It's got more of like a sniper shot, so it shoots in a center. Now, I'll show you what I mean. So if you see right here, watch this. See how it's boom, shot, bullseye, bullseye. It doesn't have a fan pattern like that. So just take note of that when you're spraying. Give the can a shake, and whenever you're ready, start spraying all this down. Now at this point, you're not looking to really coat this all in one shot. No, we're gonna be building up our layers just like we would if we were painting the car. So we're gonna do a couple coats at a time, we're gonna let this dry, and then we're gonna come back and build up those layers so we have a good foundation and we have a good amount of protection between the panel and the outside, so the salt, the corrosion, and everything else. So this way, it's not gonna get to it and the entire frame is gonna stay looking nice. Now, I would also suggest when you're doing this stuff to use a respirator. Now, I'm not exactly doing that for this only because I need to talk to you guys and walk you through this. But if you can, buy a respirator and protect yourself from inhaling all of this stuff. So I'm gonna let this sit for 10 minutes. We're gonna come back and then we're gonna hit this again with a second coat. Now, after the first coat has dried, you can see that it all looks matte. Now, that's the way it should be. Everything looks nice and clean, nice and uniform. Now that we have one coat on here, we need to come up and follow it up with a few more, just so that we have multiple layers, which is gonna be protecting our car during the winter. So grab our can of undercoat and spray this down again. So here we go. This is our second coat and we're leaving this to dry. So you can see that it's very textury, it's starting to get thick, and that's what we want. So we're gonna try and form this over the entire car and the entire underside, which means that all of it is going to be protected. So right now you can see that all of this is nice and black. Now we're gonna let this dry, and then once we're done that, we're gonna make it so that the entire bottom side of the car looks the exact same way. So it's gonna be nicely protected and good to go against winter. All right, now finally, here comes our third coat. So give the can a shake, and we're gonna be spraying down another coat over the entire section that we've already sprayed. So once we have our can shaken up, we're just gonna go ahead and hit up all the areas that were exposed before and that are now covered in 2 coats to make it to a total of 3. So what I'm doing is just I'm building up layers to make it so that this is all nicely protected. Now I'm trying to focus up in the areas that are going to be beat a lot during the winter. So all of this section here, so along here is where all of the water, all the snow and everything is going to be all mashed up. Now I'm going to be trying to focus on getting a decent amount of undercoat on there so that it's all nicely protected. Now because we have the wheel well right here, the plastic liner, we don't need to undercoat that. However, anything else that isn't covered, we need to protect. Now, if you guys remember before, we covered the back side of the panels in undercoat to prevent all of this from rusting. So we replaced these fenders on both sides. So this is new. We have Plasti-Dip on the outside. We have it undercoated on the inside, so none of this is going to rust. Now we want to make sure that the underside of the car does the exact same thing. So we want to make it so all of this is nicely protected. So you want to focus on your wheel wells and then the underside of the car. Now the underside is going to be a little bit more difficult, but it's the exact same procedure. So we're going to be cleaning up the entire bottom side of the car and we're going to be spraying all of it down. So for a baseline, you're going to be using about 1 can. You're going to be using 1 can of the 3M undercoat per wheel well, and then you're probably going to be using 2 or 3 for the bottom side of the car. Now, when you're doing that, you want to make sure you don't hit up the exhaust, anything that's rotating, so a drive shaft, a differential, your transmission, your engine, anything that's going to get very hot. You're only going to be covering up brake lines, fuel lines, the body of the car, and that's it. And then once you're done, you can take all of this off. So, there's that, not covered. And then I'm going to be taking the tape that we put on there, the tape and drape, and there we have it. Now I'm going to be replicating this exact same procedure for the other wheel wells and the same thing for the bottom side of the car. So if the car's hot, let it cool, cover up any important components that you don't want any of the undercoat on, and then go from there. And then at that point, you can go ahead and throw your wheels back on, and everything is going to be nicely protected. Now another step that you guys can do to ensure that your car is going to be nicely protected during the winter months, you can plasti dip the outside of the car to make it so that no paint, no nothing is going to get damaged. Now the plasti dip is going to be covering every single body panel, from the bumpers to the hoods to the trunk to everything in between. Now it's protecting the car from rock chips, salt, and even washing the car during the winter is going to be easier like this because you don't need to be very particularly, protective or gentle with the car. If you want, you can go to an automatic car wash, get them to, use those brushes over the entire surface, and you're not going to have to worry about scratching. That's the beauty of plasti dip. However, even if you don't want to go that route, you can still go ahead and clean the car and wax it regularly. That's going to make it so that none of the rust is going to be able to form, everything's nicely protected, any salt isn't going to be able to penetrate into the metal. However, if you have any rusted spots, I would take care of that before the winter. So if you remember before, I showed you guys how to clean up and fix up the rusted section right here on the car, and it's been holding up nicely. Now, I'm going to give you guys an update after the winter to see how this all works. But as it stands for this video, that's how you undercoat your car. Once the entire vehicle is done being undercoated, it should look something like this. So the exhaust pipe and any heat shielding should be untouched, and everything else should be black. Now for this car, we used about 6 cans of undercoat to do the entire thing, and that goes from the underside, the rear, and the front wheel wells. So from here, nothing's going to be corroded, everything's going to be looking good, and the same thing goes for the underside of the car. Throw a light down in here. The only thing that should ever corrode is the exhaust system. However, there's not much that we can do about that other than sanding it and painting it, just like I've showed you guys in a previous video. This stuff is a lot better, if you ask me, than oil spraying, but again, it's completely up to you. I like using this 3M rubberized, what do they call it? 3M professional grade rubberized undercoating. This stuff is awesome. You can get it in an aerosol, and you can even get it in a spray gun. And by that I mean hooking that up to an air compressor, loading the product in, and then spraying it kind of like what you would use for a spray gun. Similar to an HVLP gun, but slightly different. If you guys want to pick up any of the products that I use today, you guys can check out the description box. I'll have links to everything, as always. Otherwise, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.